Good afternoon on what is a warm, bright and sunny day. It is Sunday, the May 5th, and I'm in the reading Nook with a nice hot cup of tea and a box to continue unboxing. And what I have here is Acting Up in Lankhmar. This is the third numbered adventure released for Dungeon Crawl Classics Lankhmar, which is the city setting published by Goodman Games for use with Dungeon Crawl Classics, but set in the city of Lankhmar, the world in which the stories of Frafrid and Grey Mouser by Fritz Leiber are set. And in it you play cutpurses and thieves and cutthroats and so on and scoundrels, always on the lookout for make some extra coin, typically by intimidation, racketeering, theft, and so on. So, a corrupt Duke of Lankhmar's foibles, paraded before the masses for their entertainment, puts an acting troupe in trouble. Threatened by the insulted Duke and his private guard, the performers need assistance to make it through the final performance of the fiascos of Duke Hogfat. With nobody else to turn to, the troupe hires the PCs as their evening's protectors. Will the play end in a standing ovation, or will the Duke and his thugs bring down the house on the troupe and their defenders? That's a great setup, I think. And it's the sort of thing that can only be done with an urban adventure. And that's the great thing about Dungeon Crawl Classics, is that it has pushed the authors of the Dungeon Crawl Classics titles to write adventures all in one location and have them based, around interesting ideas. So for Gang Lords of Lankhmar, you have a kind of setup where the player characters are sort of like get involved in a gang war and set themselves up as gang leaders, and that gives them a base of operations to do other jobs. And it gives them NPCs to work with and so on. That's a really good adventure. And, this one gets the player characters involved in another aspect of the city. There's people who want entertainment. And it's not just going to, the nearest tavern and having a drink and a carouse. And there's lots of that in the game. That's a way of essentially of reviving your fortunes and how you feel at the end of an adventure, for example. But in this looks at another aspect of entertainment in the city and gets the player characters involved. So there we go. We've actually got a couple of adverts and a nice shot overhead of a couple of characters engaging in a dual sword fight atop, over the stage, in the section where you've got the scenery handlers would work, and then we get into introduction. So that's explaining what it's about, what this series of adventures are, and then the background to the adventure, which is quite long. And then Overture is the meeting with Jello, who runs the acting troupe, and he's going to hire the player characters and get them to try and protect the Marsh Light Theatre. So we've got a description of the theatre, different locations, so on, and then so the player characters are basically going to go there and again have to investigate and have a look around, get a description of each of the locations, and look to see where it is vulnerable to attack. And then there's preparations for the show, and that's not just preparations sort of like, obviously the players are going to be preparing for the show, which they know at one last performance before we get into this section here, which is essentially the Dung Sweep players, and then we've got a section here for adventure mechanic, and that's particular to this adventure, and that's the audience mood. Can the players keep the mood of the audience up and buoyant and willing to part with their money, or are they going to throw cabbages at the audience or at the performers, or worse? So it goes from essentially surly all the way up to ecstatic. And essentially, having done all the setup and everything, we get on to Act 1. So, there'll be unease in the wings. The noble wing captain can deal with a blacksmith who's going to basically set something up to go wrong. a lost lucky charm for one of the actors. So I'm not performing without my, without my lucky charm, as it were. And then we're into starting the show, and we have a couple of eventually scorching reviews. Attacks by the hired thugs, hired by the Duke. So that's the Rat Stranglers attack. Some arsonists strike, and then the player characters have to deal with both of them, including a spreading blaze. So literally they are fighting fire on more than one front. And so you've got to count down sort of rounds 1 and 2. What's going to happen if the player characters stand around and do nothing? Of course they're not going to do that. They're going to get an act. And then we got to Act 3, poor players strutting and fretting, and so on, questioning the victims, who've been attacked already, dealing with a poisoner in the pit. I've got some GM advice there on how to pace the scenario. And here we've actually got a good map or floor plan of the theatre. So there we go, that's in all its glory. So, lobby, seating, pit, and the stage, and the backstage area. You've got a cellar, and then you've got the section over there, essentially the fly loft area for handling all of the scenery. You have a section here. What happens if one of the players goes ill, and the player characters might get a chance to strut their stuff on the boards? Which leads to a great bit of role playing, because do you want to go and do something you wouldn't normally do? So you've got an acting performance table there. And then Act 4 is Thieves in the Rafters, and here the thieves enter, try and basically they're going to try and take advantage of the chaos and so on to take the money, leading to that encounter sort of like up there, fighting the catwalk, and then in Act 5, the grand finale. So you've got essentially this is different phases. So you've got like an assault timeline, the rat strike again. The theatre could be alight, and then it could actually just open up into an all-out actual fight with naked steel, and then they encounter the Duke himself. There we go. So it could end all end in disaster. So, conclusion, of course, curtain call. We have everyone's a critic. What happens if it goes wrong? And ending 2, it's a smash hit. And that's it, really. I mean, it's not. You've actually got sort of like Appendix A, which is scenes from Act 3 of the Fiascos of Duke Hog Fat, which the player characters can perform. So you'd hand those out so that they can perform and actually engage in the play itself. Essentially, as their player characters are running around trying to prevent descending into chaos and disaster. So they get to perform in more ways than one in this scenario. And then last of course, we've got the advert for Dungeon Crawl Classics, and with the 3 signature characters for Dungeon Crawl Classics 3, because Lankhmar is really kind of predicated on like 2 or 3 player characters rather than the usual 4 or 5, typically not clerics. So that's acting up in Lankhmar. A nice kind of play on words, I think, because essentially, you've got the players acting up on stage. You've got the Duke and he, acting up because he doesn't like the satire that's being shown. You've got the acting up sort of like all the attackers he's hired, and then you've got the opportunity there for the player characters to actually act up themselves and be on stage and perform with their characters performing. So yeah, I think that's a lot of fun. Nice little scenario for Dungeon Crawl Classics. Well, I hope you enjoyed this unboxing the Nook. If you did, then please do click on the like button down below. And if you've got any comments or feedback, I do appreciate you taking the time to post those. And lastly, if you want to be alerted to get more unboxings of the Nook, where you'll see me out here with a box containing a book or game, or in this case a scenario for Dungeon Crawl Classics, which I will unbox and chat about to the best extent of my knowledge for roughly 10 minutes or so, all of course accompanied by a nice hot cup of tea, then please do click on the subscribe button down below. Thanks again for watching another unboxing of the Nook, and we'll be back again soon with another one. Bye for now.